After 3 years of work, our follow-up to the Meat Eater Fish and Game Cookbook is here. It's the Meat Eater Outdoor Cookbook, wild game recipes for the grill, smoker, campfire, and camp stove. Here is your book for everything that's best cooked or eaten outside, from grilling to open fire cooking to Dutch ovens to smokers to barbecue to backpacking meals to how to pull off the perfect fish fry, with pit stops along the way for lessons about Ice Age cooking methods and the best 5 ways to construct a cooking fire you can be proud of. And of course, we're focusing on wild game and fish here with over 100 recipes, including stuffed venison burgers 3 ways, wild duck with ahi verde sauce, a jerky made with cola, a gin and tonic made with fire-charred lemons, and grilled frog legs made with a sticky sweet sauce. This ain't your normal cookbook, so be prepared to be surprised. Get your copy now. For more info, visit themeateater.com or buy it wherever books are sold.
Welcome to Wired to Hunt's Rut Fresh Radio, bringing you the latest reports from the Whitetail Woods. And now, your hosts, Casey Smith and Tyler Jones.
Brr, it's cold outside. With Christmas fast approaching, I know it's hard to get in the woods, but hunters around the country are finding ways to make it work, and especially with the cold weather, it is time still to get in the woods and fill some of those late season tags. This is Rut Fresh Radio. I'm your host, Casey Smith. I do my best to sound cool, and I've got a cool guy here with me. His name is Mark Kenyon. Mark, welcome to Texas. Tyler Jones is here as well.
Not so cool, but
I thought you said welcome just fine that time.
Thanks, man.
And thanks for having me in Texas here with you, buddy.
You're welcome, dude.
Welcome. Yep.
Welcome. We've done our best to eat Mexican food every meal of the day for the past
you
few
might
days.
have just slayed me tonight with it. Like I'm about to.
Slayed the dragon, huh?
Yeah, you slayed the dragon with the full. They have something here called the full donkey.
Yeah.
And we ate the full donkey.
We did. Everybody except Eric got a full donkey, and he had burrito envy. He told us on the way home. So
that donkey's just kicking in my belly right now.
That's right, just in there, just hee-hawing around. We're doing
legitimately, that was a burrito that was more than a foot long. That might have been like 16 inches of burrito.
Yeah, that would make Jared jealous for sure. Way more than a foot long. It was a tasty treat. We've been doing some hunting in Texas, which is real exciting. We got some folks today to talk about some hunting around the country. One of the big themes, it seems, is cold weather. And cold weather is controversial. Did y'all realize that?
I didn't until today.
And when it comes to deer movement, cold weather is controversial.
Who says that?
Me.
You.
Well, I would say that So there's organizations out there and who we've interviewed. Some we actually have a guy from the NDA on today to talk about hunting in Georgia. And there are studies out that say that cold weather does not affect deer movement, and deer move the same in cold weather.
I know.
Yeah. And you know what the problem is, Mark? I think is that they are not taking into account what time of day in the 24-hour period the movement happens.
Yeah, they're measuring different stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
So does the total amount of movement change? Probably not. I believe that.
No.
But does when that movement happens, or does the distance traveled over the course of that most important hour for us change maybe? Yeah. Or does the specific, or like even, what about a study that looked at just bucks over 3 years old or something like that?
Yeah. Absolutely. There's a lot of data points that are hard to keep up with, and I think they do a pretty good job over there of getting some information out and stuff from time to time. But I think that as a hunter, I can probably go out there and make a different assessment than what might be seen. But I don't know. It's kind of interesting to think that it gives you hope that you always have a chance, even if it's not cold. I guess it's kind of that thing. So
and like you don't need cold weather, but
no.
I don't think anyone who spent a lot of time out in the woods would deny the fact that, man, when you get the certain days like that, it's just different. It is special, and we all have seen those days.
Absolutely.
Yep, no doubt. I mean, we're not out there perceiving deer movement in the night.
Right.
So that
Who
doesn't
knows?
matter to us.
No.
What matters is daylight movement.
I've actually came really close, like throughout my hunting career, to shutting the nighttime photos off on trail cameras because it means that little to you. But it's still something I like to hang on to because you at least if you get a picture of him at 2 a.m., you know he's still alive. So that's like a reason to keep him on. But otherwise, the nighttime movement just isn't hardly anything. People also kind of looking back on this rut. All right.
This
is
rut or this season?
So this season, but this rut, I guess, this is Rut Fresh, and we start doing Rut Fresh in September. So it's all the rut.
Who's rutting in September?
I don't know, but why do we call it Rut Fresh in September? Why don't we call it Deer Fresh?
It's a Spencer thing. I don't know. blame the old guy. I don't know.
That's right. That was somebody before our time. So let's look back at the deer season. If y'all don't know, this is the final episode of Rut Fresh on the year. We've had a ton of fun doing this thing. Really appreciate y'all listening. Since we got Mark here, it'd be a good time to maybe evaluate some of this because he's hunted some different states than us. What's one of your big takeaways from the season as far as deer hunting goes? Like, what was a theme, a motif for the year for you?
My biggest Rut Fresh takeaway this year is just something I got to illustrate for the listeners real fast.
This is going to be a joke.
Because this is going to change people's listening experience. Because when I listen to the podcast, I kind of envision you guys sitting in the truck talking or whatever, doing this. But right now I realize what's really going on when you guys do your Rut Fresh Radio. Casey is cross-legged, sitting on top of a table like a genie or like a big Buddha or something. He's sitting there just rubbing his feet and kind of rocking back and forth.
Prince Ali, Alia Barbara.
So think about that next time you listen to Rut Fresh. But as far as big themes for this year's season, man, I don't know. I think one thing that stands out to me, and I actually want to do some research on this. I'm going to. But I feel like this year there was a particularly extended, long, hot period during what should have been primo days of the rut.
Mm-hmm. When you say hot, you mean temperature?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yes. And over
early November, right?
Yeah.
everybody experienced that. Yeah.
Everywhere from that first 10 days or so was brutally hot for much of the country. I've never had so many days like that where I literally hunted, I think, 8 straight days in 70 or hotter in the upper Midwest.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. We left a place on November 9th with days left on the hunt just because we were let's just go home and see our families.
It's going to be in the 80s for a few days.
Yeah.
And there was cold weather on the horizon.
Yeah, so I mean, when it comes to the rut itself, that, even though people always can, I killed a buck when it was 80 degrees this year on November 1st. So it can happen, but it's never as good as it could have been. It's never as much fun when you have that much more, reduced time periods of the movement you're hoping for. So the big takeaway for the rut for me was man, that was the big thing. That took, 70% of my rut hunts this year were kind of meh because of that.
Yeah.
Here's another. Just super super fast. The last thing I was gonna say was I feel like this is a trend. There's been a lot of hot ruts over the last decade, it feels like. Mm-hmm. And I want to see if that's just me thinking that or if that's true or not.
Yeah.
And so I'm, in the words of, or in your vernacular, I'm fixing to do some research and crunch the numbers.
Yeah. Y'all don't say fixing to?
What?
Y'all don't say fixing to?
No, that's a Southern thing.
I thought that was just an American thing. I didn't know it was a Southern thing.
Yeah.
I went to Costa Rica one time, and people there were kind of astounded at the idea of fixing to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The rut stuff is also similar to what we were talking about earlier with hunter perceived movement, right? Where we got to hear from hunters across the country throughout this Rut Fresh thing, running this thing this year. And then also we were out a ton in November in different states, different climates, different habitats, all this stuff. And I mean, it is undoubtedly, it's, there's no doubt that there was a different perceived rut by hunters this year overall. Mm-hmm. Everybody we talked to, the first 10 days of November pretty much were not even close to the best days of the rut. Mm-hmm. I mean, that I guess it would be after the first 10 days to the 20th was really when most everybody's rut was the best, especially 12th, 14th, 15th, those dates. And so this is one of those things where you see the same research that says it's based off diurnal period, so it's like the photo period or whatever. It's the length of the time of the day, and that's when the estrus cycle is based off of, and that never changes, right? Mm-hmm. But you have actually some weird theories about that are pretty cool. But like overall, there's no doubt that we perceived it differently across the country this year. So, this is something that this is a discussion that needs to probably continue at some point. But like, how do we balance these things of of course the science says this, but I'm just telling you that I've talked to 4 dudes a week for however many weeks, and there's no doubt that this is the way everybody has been saying.
And like I wouldn't doubt that, like even a year like this, the peak of breeding might have still been when it usually is, but again, it comes down to what do we experience as hunters. So, does the peak of rutting activity that hunters see change from year to year? That certainly could be. And so, like the visible daylight chasing, cruising, that kind of stuff, I think that does shift.
Yeah.
And how do you figure out what that is? Like, what makes that happen?
The chasing,
I think
part of the season could be just non-existent. Like chasing and peak breeding can happen at the same time. In a year. Like, it doesn't always – we try to put things in a box where it's like, they're going to chase for a week, and then they're actually going to lock down and breed for a week. Maybe lockdown and breeding and chasing all happened at the same time because the weather was nice.
Yeah, I feel like weather, and I don't know about the moon stuff. A lot of people say the moon stuff maybe impacts it, but I feel weather is the biggest thing for me that will tell you like how much will we see during daylight versus not, and how just how intense does it get? Like how comfortable are these deer cruising and running around all over the place? Like they're gonna breed no matter what, but maybe they're gonna do it in the dark when it's 20 degrees cooler, and they're gonna be chilled out, in the middle of the day when we want to see them running around, but they just don't want to do it.
My personal anecdotes from this season on that front would be one of the things that I would kind of bring up, kind of what you were talking about. We like to think of our years and our calendar days as fixed points. And, I mean, we all understand the concept of a leap year. But because of that, think about it this way. Sometimes Thanksgiving's on the 22nd of November. Sometimes Thanksgiving's on the 26th of November. The rut also can deviate that much. Like November 7th is not always November 7th.
Right.
So we could have a weird year this year where it's as swinging as far into the month of November on our calendar as possible, but to the deer, it's the same exact
Still
date.
365 days or whatever.
Yeah. So and the reason I believe that possibly was the case is because I was on the ground in multiple states through all this and observed, like, I guess it's November 2nd I stalked the big buck. And we had the weird thing go on. Yeah. But last year, or I guess let me say 2021, I stalked this deer. He was on does very hard on November 2nd, just tending, doing the thing. This year, he was bedded by himself with dry hawks on November 2nd. So he was doing something different. And then I killed a deer on, November 5th, who was cruising, but not with does, and was just kind of chill cruising. And then I killed it on November 8th in the Midwest.
I think you're doing like some subtle bragging now.
No.
That's what I was kind of feeling that way.
This is the first time I've ever killed 2 deer in November, pretty much. So, but like that deer on November 8th was in really good shape and hardly been running and just wasn't beat up.
Yeah.
He had broken tines, but I think they do that early sometimes.
And then we left on the 9th because things were super slow. And then we came back like 4 or 5 days later, and it was same place, and it was unreal. I mean, it was awesome. So
it's cool. And another thing, to bring this back to Rut Fresh, a thing that I noticed this season, and this is our first year doing Rut Fresh, so this might be the way it goes. Hunters in general are an optimistic bunch. They might be pessimistic when they're telling stories or whatever, but when they go to give you a number of 1 to 10, it's always way higher than it should be.
I like how you like dog on them a little bit. You're like, man, I like your optimism.
Yeah.
But then like later, like in an intro, you'll be like, man, I'll tell you what, these guys are super optimistic, but really, a 2 or 3 is what really some of these should
we
be.
have this thing we call a Midwest 6. We haven't talked about this on the, but if you're from the Midwest and you don't know really what to say, you're going to say a 6 for sure. That's what it's like. Oh yeah, it's going to be pretty good. Well,
yeah, you're in Illinois. Even if it sucks, it's still better than everybody else's.
Yeah, that's right. That's exactly right, man. So we got a bunch of guys from around to give us some good reports from across the country. Guys are still out there hunting. Mark Kenyon, you're still out there hunting. I would like for you to give us the honorary 1 through 10 rating of rut action in Texas at the moment, sir.
Yeah, so we are in Texas, and I've only hunted 1 day here so far.
Okay.
But based on what I've seen, man, that donkey is just like that donkey's churning in my gut. What I have seen is that the rut is going. I wasn't seeing chasing or anything today, but I was seeing cruising bucks, absolutely, and I was seeing bucks locked on does. It was good activity. So I'm going to give you higher than a Midwest 6.
That's what I'm talking about, bro. Yeah.
And I feel like that's warranted. Like when you're seeing cruising and bucks on does, and I saw 2 shooters today. I feel like that's like we're an 8 category.
Let's go. Yeah. I don't hold that against you.
Is that fair?
Yeah, I think so for sure. And that matches up with what it should be. I think. So I think for sure an 8's fair. Now, Tyler and I didn't have as good of an evening, but the evenings across the board for our crew was a little bit low, but the mornings were real nice. And I think that this is my personal thought, but places that have well-defined food sources and bed-to-feed type patterns, I think that evenings are really nice. A place like we're hunting right now in Texas, where it's generally just a roaming, browsing type food, the evenings are kind of tough because they can just stand up and eat where they're at.
Yeah, and it was so quiet this evening.
Yeah, it sure was, man.
Yeah,
variable winds and stuff, which is a December thing. Man, that's one of the things that's tough about December is that in the evenings the wind will die and you'll have thermals that are whirling around.
Yeah,
but can't kill them from the couch, so you got to get out there. Let's hear what the guys have to say from across the country.
Sure. We've got Greg Farrell in Mississippi this week. He's talking about some rut action that's been happening there. You know, one thing about it is the South still has ruts to come. So
absolutely.
It's something to think about as you go forward for sure. We also have Lindsey Thomas Jr. in Georgia, Josh Ilderton in West Virginia, and our very own Hayden Samick from Maryland. He's been having some good hunts up there.
Some big deer in that state, man.
Yeah.
About to blow it up.
I know,
everybody
man.
should go there.
I think that's right, man, for sure. Y'all should go to Maryland and hunt next year.
They call it the Iowa of the East.
Do they really?
Yeah.
Is that a thing?
Yeah.
How about that?
That's really a thing, though. You're not just playing.
I'm not just kidding.
How about that? I should go to there.
Man.
We really are. There are like 20 guys from Maryland right now who hate us for saying that.
You said it, not me.
I think did
that
you
was
say that,
actually Wired to Hunt. That has nothing to do with the hunt. Are you familiar with the ribeye in the sky? Speaking of nomers.
Yep.
You are? How about that?
I am.
That's cool. Yeah. Maybe we'll get one of those. We're kind of in that country
I
right
heard
now.
some.
Did you?
I heard some earlier this morning.
Yep. Some clucking turkeys.
Yep.
All right. Let's check out these Southern Rut boys and see what they have to say. On the phone now, I've got Hayden Samick of Meat Eater. He has been hunting in Maryland, of all places. What's up, dude?
Hey, man. How's it going? How are you guys?
Oh, we're good. Just on the road to another hunt, man. It sounds like you're doing the same. Are you from that area of the country originally?
No. We're my girlfriend and I are down hunting her farm here. They have like a family farm that doesn't get hit a bunch, so I'm out visiting her while I'm on the East Coast. My folks are up from Pennsylvania. That's where I grew up hunting. So yeah. Close.
Yeah,
close.
Yeah. To us, that like the East Coast is all the same place. So I'm like, oh yeah, that's where you're from.
Yeah.
So did you in fact choose your girlfriend according to how much unpressured hunting land her family had?
Oh,
that is rumored.
I mean, in my dating profile on the internet, it says permissions only.
Yeah.
So
you don't have to be.
Like
you don't have to be lonely at permissionsonly.com.
Yeah, that's how I date. That's how I find all my girlfriends. Farmers only.
That's it, dude. That's hilarious. So you've been having some pretty good hunting up there, huh?
You know what? It's been surprisingly good, man.
Yeah.
This is one of those spots where I really wanted to come into during archery, but I'm so busy hunting out west during the season. And also it's just like inconvenient living out, in Montana. But she was trying to get me to hunt the muzzleloader season out here, and I told her I wasn't super sure about it. And then her uncle sent me a couple trail cam pics, and I got real sure real quick. But I'll tell you what, I was surprised. I'm surprised at what I've been seeing lately. Here.
Yeah. So what's the deer movement like? What are deer doing there right now?
So the way that this farm is like spread out, there's a central road that goes through it, and you can see into like the back edges of a bunch of fields. Man, we're just like going down, and there are just deer moving everywhere. You know, the first night we got here, I saw a pretty decent buck, and I couldn't tell if he was just like playing around with like a smaller buck, but he kind of nudged him in the butt with his antler, and I was like, that's like kind of funny. They're still being like a little cheeky, a little territorial maybe. And then yesterday we're in a blind, and we're watching these deer, and it was funny, man. They filtered out by size. First it was like a button buck, then a spike, then a forked horn, then a little 6. And next thing you know, over this rise, all the tines are coming out. It's a definite shooter deer. And following him was this little yearling doe, maybe like 6 months. She must have just come into heat because he saw her and chased off the other 3 bucks and just made a beeline after her. I mean, like nose down, full wing sprint after it, and we never saw him again. We had a shot for maybe half a second, but with a muzzleloader, it's really hard to take a snapshot like that. You wouldn't want to.
Yeah, for sure.
But legit chasing activity. I couldn't believe it. It's a second rut that everybody talks about, man. The second rut.
Yeah. So like a normal rut there is normal time for the rest of the country, kind of early November, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. That unless I'm missing something, that's how I interpreted it. Yeah.
Gotcha. So I mean, how do you is there a way to even like, are you taking that information and going, okay, I'm going to stay in that area because there's some kind of estrus thing happening right now? Or is there a way to like pair that with like overall doe traffic in certain areas and just assume that you can make that replicate other places?
Man, it's weird because like they're getting back on their like pattern. You know what I mean? All the does are bunched up. All the bucks seem to be bunched up. But then there are these just little wild cards that go through. I don't think that you can plan for it. Like, I would definitely be trying to just go where there were like the biggest deer concentrations. I wouldn't necessarily be looking through like travel corridors. And the other thing too is like, it's so unpressured that, you can almost just hunt the edges of fields. You know what I mean? As long as you get into like the right corner of that field, it's not like you're in a bunch of public where they're only going to come out in the fields at dark. So it's kind of cool, man. Very rarely do you get to, or very rarely do I get to go see a whitetail population that's just not been hunted to hell,
Yeah, that's cool.
Sounds like fun, man. Yeah. It's always good to be in a place where there's a lot of deer. So I know season's kind of winding down kind of across the country, right? So as we look forward to kind of some of these last weeks of the season here, if you had to predict what you think buck movement will be like for the next week, what would you say it would be on a scale of 1 to 10?
Well, right now it's kind of warm. It should be getting a little bit colder where I'm at. You're going to see like that wild card, but otherwise I think it's going to be pretty average. I would give it like a 6, 6, 7 maybe. Again, it's right around that time where you get that second cycle or some of those younger fawns are coming in for the first time. So, 6, 7 if you get a wild card and you get some late rutting activity, but it's kind of the closer.
Cool, man. Well, I hope you have some great success out there, man, and thanks for the report.
Oh yeah, you bet. Thanks for having me.
All right, now I've got Josh Ilderton. He's up in West Virginia. He's been spending some time hunting mountain bucks up there and doing some cool stuff, videoing and all that. Josh, what's the word from your neck of the woods, man?
My word from the neck of the woods in West Virginia is there was some really good movement this past Thursday and Friday. This kind of secondary late does coming in, and if you were near them, then you were getting some movement. The last 2 weeks have been deader than all get out, but it seems to be picking up right now with this second rut, and the late does start to come into heat.
Yeah, that's good. So you are seeing a little bit of second rut happening then.
Yeah, we did on Thursday and Friday. Saw a lot of that. Actually saw some breeding.
How about that?
And then it kind of slowed down, and we had midday movement yesterday, and then nothing in the morning and hardly nothing in the evening. Huh. And then, of course, I ain't got a report back from Zach yet today, but he's seeing some deer early this morning, but really no chasing or rut movement.
Yeah. So you have any assumptions about that midday movement? Is that a moon-based thing, or what do you think?
Yeah, that's what I think it is.
Uh-huh.
I think this rut action is hit or miss, and it will be for the next 4 or 5 days. For these late does and the late yearlings, if they get bred this year, I think this secondary rut is just going to be hit or miss, and then hopefully these deer start going into a feeding frenzy within the last 2 weeks of the season.
Yeah.
Is there any pattern to finding those yearlings that might come into heat late? Like, do you ever do anything like that where you're like, oh, that doe family group's got like 3 yearlings in it, so I'm going to hunt over in that area. I know where they're at, and hopefully one of those will be one of those late estrus does.
Yeah, we do it sometimes, but it is so big and the mountains it's so vast that it's hard to pattern deer here in southern West Virginia.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Because they could be over here today and over there for 3 days, and it's just really hard to pattern deer unless you're feeding.
Yeah.
You can put a pattern on them if you're feeding, but it's really hard to pattern them.
So are y'all hunting just high traffic areas right now, or what in particular are you looking at?
Well, we run a lot of game cameras.
Uh-huh.
And when we see action on game cameras, we go into that area.
Gotcha.
I know we miss a lot of stuff that way, but we especially this late season where the bucks are run down. You know, they look like damn it to hell, and it just they're having to start re-energizing and eating, and so we got a lot of cameras on food sources and stuff, and hopefully.
Well, so in that vast country, I'm assuming you don't have a ton of agriculture food sources. What are those deer eating?
Right now they're browsing.
Yeah.
You know, and they're eating red oaks. They're still on the ground, but you know, all the white oaks and they're all gone, and what's left on the ground's rotten. So they're eating if there are red oaks on the ground, they're eating them. But heck, there ain't a whole lot of them, so they're mainly just browsing.
So you're looking for clear cuts and stuff like that?
Well, we hunt old coal mining jobs, so it's a bunch of reclaim and like autumn olives and like CRPs, lot of sawgrars and just thick like CRP stuff.
Yeah. So are you going to stay with that the next week? That kind of pattern is hunting those areas, looking for deer that are coming back to feed heavy.
Yeah, and then the grasses. You know, there's a lot. It's pretty good open country where we hunt. So we'll go back to at some point. We keep on telling ourselves this, and we keep on grinding. But at some point, these deer's got to get back in the grass and start feeding.
Mm-hmm.
And the shooter bucks will show up to give us a chance to spot and stop. So Zach will keep on hanging, and then I will probably glass and try to find bucks that way.
Gotcha. Cool, man. Well, sounds like you got a good plan going forward. If you're looking at the next week, all things considered, moon, weather, and just time of year, if you had to put a number on it, 1 to 10, what would you rate the buck movement as being?
Can I put two numbers on it?
Wait, yeah, I think we could do that. That's a good question.
All right, so I'll put a 3 on today through Wednesday, and then I'll put a 8.5 Wednesday through the weekend.
All right, man. That's high. I like that. That gives me good confidence.
What's the big change there?
Just kind of going by my moon charts and the movement we've been seeing. And the weather that's hitting out here, I think it's slow here the next couple of days.
All right.
Cool, man. Well, we've been looking for a mooner to get on here, and then you're just the guy. So we appreciate that. Solid information, sir.
Hey, let me tell you, I killed my buck during the red moon, so
there you go.
There's a lot of activity if you watch that moon. They watches the moon and wind.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, awesome, man. Well, appreciate the information, and I hope that you have good success here at the end of the month, man.
Yeah, man. Y'all have a great trip, too.
All right. We'll see you.
All right.
After 3 years of work, our follow-up to the Meat Eater Fish and Game Cookbook is here. It's the Meat Eater Outdoor Cookbook, wild game recipes for the grill, smoker, campfire, and camp stove. Here is your book for everything that's best cooked or eaten outside. From grilling to open fire cooking to Dutch ovens to smokers to barbecue to backpacking meals to how to pull off the perfect fish fry, with pit stops along the way for lessons about Ice Age cooking methods and the best 5 ways to construct a cooking fire you can be proud of. And of course, we're focusing on wild game and fish here with over 100 recipes, including stuffed venison burgers 3 ways, wild duck with ahi verde sauce, a jerky made with cola, a gin and tonic made with fire-charred lemons, and grilled frog legs made with a sticky sweet sauce. This ain't your normal cookbook, so be prepared to be surprised. Get your copy now. For more info, visit themeateater.com or buy it wherever books are sold.
We have got Lindsey Thomas Jr. of the National Deer Association on the line. This dude's been hunting down in southeast Georgia. Lindsey, what's happening, man?
Oh, it's not a lot. How about you guys? Y'all doing all right?
We're doing good. We're kind of excited. We're in Texas hunting right now and got some cool weather, and I bet you that cool weather's headed y'all's direction, isn't it?
It is. We're looking for some deep cold for Georgia coming up soon.
Yeah, how about that? So you've been hunting some recently. Has it been warmer, and has that affected deer?
It was pretty warm throughout most of the early season for us. And I'm in southeast Georgia near the coast. Mm-hmm. We have a pretty early rut there. It's late October, early November, so Halloween is kind of right around, peak rut for us. And it definitely was, warm earlier in the year, and we're getting some cold weather now. But, they're going to rut regardless of what the temperature is around the same time every year. So our rut was when it was supposed to be.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's this colder weather. It's obviously nice to get in the woods when it's colder.
Yeah. So you're down there in that pine country. I know y'all do pine straw and all that kind of stuff, which is really cool. Not traditionally known as like great deer forage, though. They don't really like the pine needles too much, I don't imagine. So what is kind of the key to finding deer in that kind of country? Are you looking for thick pockets of bedding, or kind of how do you hunt outside those rut windows?
Well, it's the flat woods for sure, and then a lot of timber activity, so a lot of cover in all directions. So yeah, it's tough to sort of discern what a bedding area is for deer in South Georgia, or any of the sort of fabled movement patterns of bed to feed. That's tough to find. So, it's natural foods, it's acorns, it is soft mast, and then food plots if you got them. But usually what happens is here, a lot of the food plots get hunted early and get pressured out, and then so you're not seeing as many deer. And that's what we've seen here this year. But now if you've got food plots that haven't been pressured late in the season like this right now, that can be really good. Or at least some plots maybe you hadn't hunted in a few weeks and you can sneak back in there. Mm-hmm. So food is always a big part of it for us. And, getting in some swamps and areas where you can see a good ways when the peak movement is on back, like I said, in late October.
Yeah. So for those guys that might not have the food plots, talk about a little bit about like native forage. Maybe, for us, like here in East Texas, this time of year, we still have green, in areas pretty much year round. Same for y'all, I imagine. For us, like you see deer starting to hit, and I know it's a non-native, but privet. We see honeysuckle being browsed pretty heavy too. Are there things like that people could key in on if they don't have food plots?
There are some, but mostly this time of year, what I see is acorns that are remaining in the red oak family.
Sure.
Usually for us, it's water oaks. And we do have some live oaks that are holding late this year. So finding any acorns you can that are still around. And as some people know, the red oak family, they tend to last longer on the ground, and they're viable, on for weeks after they've fallen from a tree, unlike acorns in the white oak family, which get gone fast, but also don't last as long. They go ahead and germinate. So anyhow, if you've, you might have had some red oaks, water oaks, any oak in the red oak family that was dropping earlier this year, but the deer didn't seem to be attracted to it. You need to go back and check those again, because now as forage gets scarce, now that we're getting some good cold, deer will circle back and look for those, and you'll find activity under those trees, even though the acorns have been sitting there for weeks.
So you mentioned the cold there. Much of the South, and really the whole country, is going to experience cold, but particularly in the South, it's pretty timely because we're still hunting deer. How do you feel like that's going to affect deer movement, that really sharp cold spell?
The science shows it doesn't really affect deer movement. Deer got to eat every day of the year, regardless of what the temperature is. So, find where the food is, and that's where you need to be. And this time of year, I think I told y'all I'm already seeing bucks getting back together in bachelor groups on my cameras because we're so far out from the rut at this point. It's been a month and a half basically since the peak. And bucks they're trying to, wherever you hunt after the rut, bucks are going to be trying to catch up physically because they've been exerting themselves, chasing does, spending a lot of time without eating. They need to get caught up. And so they're going to be, on food. And that's regardless of the weather. We see that even if in where we continue to have mild weather right on up to Christmas and beyond. I mean, they still got to eat every day. So again, it's now the food, the weather may affect food sources. If it hasn't been cold yet and it hasn't killed off a lot of the natural forage and green forage, then that's, they may still be on that. But if we get a good deep cold snap and it does sort of convert over to the deer to winter browse versus, green forage, then you're going to see them hunting acorns and hitting food plots and other things that are available, particularly if you've got like a brassica food plot that's still around, still productive. That they'll really be keying on those.
Yeah, man, that's good info right there. I appreciate that, dude. So if you had to look forward to the next week and give buck movement a rating from 1 to 10, what would you call it?
I'm going to say, a 5 to 6. It's pretty good movement. It's not rut movement. It's just, bucks are, like I said, I'm seeing them coming back to food plots and out there even together in groups, chowing down. They're hungry and they got to get caught up. So that's what they're doing. Now, you may not see them in the daylight, and I'm not seeing daylight moving on my cameras because all my cameras are on food plots. And all those cameras, which I moved them there in over Thanksgiving holiday, I moved my cameras from rut-related locations like scrapes to food plots. And all those food plots had been hunted throughout the season. So all the activity I'm seeing on those plots right now is at night. And that makes sense. That's from the pressure. It's not because deer went nocturnal. That's, my cameras are in places where deer have been pressured all season. And so they're only coming in there in the dark. They're still moving in daylight. You just got to find where that is.
Yeah. Awesome, man. Appreciate the information, Lindsay. And I hope that you have a very Merry Christmas, sir.
Same to you guys, and good luck in South Texas.
All right, we're talking to Greg Farrell. He's with First Light, does a lot of cool things there, designing awesome gear. And he's been in Mississippi recently, hanging out with old Levi. And, how did Levi get it done the first night and you didn't, man? I don't understand that.
I asked myself the same thing, but I guess if you're gonna lose to somebody, maybe losing to the greatest guy to ever do it, I guess it's a little easier to sleep at night.
That's true, man. Yeah, you'd hate to lose like me or KC.
That's right.
Golly, you're bottom of the barrel at that point, man.
Oh man.
So, was it the Rut down there?
Yeah, so I was down there last week, so it would have been hunting dates like the 11th to the 16th of December. And man, that was it was right on the tail end of their rut, which is pretty cool in terms of being able to extend, like a true rut hunt into the month of December versus, what I'm used to kind of, being in the Midwest as much as possible. It's kind of that November time frame. So it's pretty awesome.
Mm-hmm. So were you using like typical kind of, I guess, shoulder rut tactics? Were you doing some calling and stuff like that?
Yeah, so the place we were on, pretty heavily managed in terms of age class of deer. So the buck to doe ratio is really good. There's a lot of, that older age class deer. A lot of deer make it, 3-4 plus there. So because of that, I would say we were using, some of those shoulder tactics. Like they still respond to calls. The bucks are pretty aggressive there because, there is a pretty good number of bucks per doe on that place. I would say, however, I think we caught like the very tail end of it. So really what we were seeing is like the first day and a half, there was still some good chasing and seeking going on. Those bucks were moving around trying to, establish and maintain their territory and trying to pick up a late hot doe. But really the rest of the week, it was tough. It got a little warm, and the bigger mature deer were definitely locked down.
Mm-hmm.
We saw a ton of bucks with does pinned down, and they just weren't moving. So that made it a little tough being at the tail end of that rut. Some of the younger ones were still cruising around, not really knowing what they're doing, trying to pick up a doe. But those bigger bucks were definitely locked down hard.
Yeah. So were you hunting near food or near bedding, or kind of did you try different things there? What was what were you having the most success?
Yeah, so kind of right away at the beginning of the week, just based off of what a few other guys that were there saw leading up to that, we were in those transition areas hard because those bucks were still cruising and moving. And then as we kind of saw the more mature deer start to lock down and pin does down, we moved in tight to bedding. I mean, our plan basically the rest of the week was get as close to doe bedding as we possibly could, as close to the thick stuff as we possibly could. Because really, the way they were acting and moving, your best bet was you almost had to get set up within 100 yards of them because they weren't moving much more than that.
So kind of looking forward here, the South is about to experience a pretty good cold front, but I know it's kind of tailing off on the rut there. So do you think that the weather has much effect on that rut movement? Do you think it would still be rocking and rolling down there if it's going to be cold?
Yeah, I mean, based off of what I saw, and, mind you, we were in Mississippi, basically just south of the Tennessee border. I think what you're going to see in this next week is you're going to see a lot of deer move back to kind of post-rut feeding patterns. I think you're going to have the straggler, doe or two that's still hot and still getting pursued. But I think that cold front's going to help the movement on all fronts, right, in both of those scenarios. So, man, if I had another week to be there, what I would be doing is I'd be getting close to food. Because that's where the does are going to be. I think, those bucks haven't really ate or laid down much in the last 3 weeks, so they're going to start hitting food again. And frankly, if they are still looking for that, that last hot doe or two, I think those bucks are going to start to really congregate around the areas the does are spending time.
Yeah, man, good stuff there. If you had to guess or take a shot at ranking buck movement from a scale of 1 to 10 in the next week with cold temps coming in, based off of what you saw last week too, what would you rate that as being?
Man, I think it's going to be good. They had, obviously they run a ton of trail cams, and I had the opportunity to see actually a few of the bucks that were taken last week, photos from weeks before. And I would say it was pretty obvious a lot of those deer had lost, 30 to 40 pounds over the course of the last 3 weeks just running hard. So I think with that being said, the stage of the rut it's in, that cold front, all those things are going to lead to bucks are going to be wanting to eat, and they're going to want to eat a lot. So I think you're going to see a lot of daylight movement around food sources. And I think it'd be, pretty good. I'd probably have to say, somewhere in that maybe 7 to 8 range would be my guess in terms of what they're going to be doing.
Mm-hmm. Man, that's pretty good. Woo. That'll fire some Mississippi hunters
Perk you up.
Sure.
Let's go.
Man, if I could, I'd be back there right now instead of sitting back at the computer. I'll tell you that.
Well, it's weird how we have to work to pay for this thing that we love doing, man. But I understand it, and I appreciate your advice here, man, and the thoughts on Mississippi. And I hope you have a Merry Christmas, man.
Yeah, you guys as well. I know you guys are still out there grinding, so good luck with the rest of your season. Hope you can notch another tag. You guys have had a heck of a year, so congrats on that. And if I don't talk to you before, have a great holidays.
Awesome, man. Thanks, Greg.
I want to tell y'all how much we appreciate you tuning in to Rut Fresh Radio this season. It's been a blast getting to talk to hunters from around the country, and I hope you've had fun and learned a lot about hunting whitetail all over this place. So, a couple things for you to keep in mind or to check out as we close this thing out, okay? Be sure and subscribe to the Element channel on YouTube and go watch our newest video. Our buddy Eric, who does a lot of our videography and all kinds of stuff for us, he's our hop, as we call him, killed his first buck ever with a bow, first buck ever in general on Texas public land, which is a huge achievement for this guy. So we'd really appreciate it if you check that out. Also, check out the Wired to Hunt podcast, because we are hunting with old Mark Kenya right now, as we've been talking about. And y'all should be sure and check out the podcast this week, because I do believe you might hear some of us Southerners on the Wired to Hunt podcast. And then as well, be sure you're subscribed to the Meat Eater YouTube channel so that you can see the Buck Truck series when it comes out in 2023. Again, guys, thank y'all so much for listening. This is Rut Fresh. Keep it fresh.
After 3 years of work, our follow-up to the Meat Eater Fish and Game Cookbook is here. It's the Meat Eater Outdoor Cookbook, wild game recipes for the grill, smoker, campfire, and camp stove. Here is your book for everything that's best cooked or eaten outside. From grilling to open fire cooking to Dutch ovens to smokers to barbecue to backpacking meals to how to pull off the perfect fish fry, with pit stops along the way for lessons about Ice Age cooking methods and the best 5 ways to construct a cooking fire you can be proud of. And of course, we're focusing on wild game and fish here with over 100 recipes, including stuffed venison burgers 3 ways, wild duck with ahi verde sauce, a jerky made with cola, a gin and tonic made with fire-charred lemons, and grilled frog legs made with a sticky sweet sauce. This ain't your normal cookbook, so be prepared to be surprised. Get your copy now. For more info, visit themeateater.com or buy it wherever books are sold.